Well, welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and yes, we are not in the garage, we are at a studio complex because hiding in one of the studios here is the new Caterham Project V. Now this is their electric car that they launched at Goodwood this year, and I'm very intrigued by this. I just know Caterham, it's 50 years of Caterham, and it's a very simple formula for the last 50 years if we ignore Caterham 21 many years ago. But this time they're looking at electric. Who would have thought we'd have an electric coupe Caterham? But the Project V wowed everyone when it was shown. It is a beautiful little car. Alpine A110, Lotus Emira, it's that sort of car. And they invited me up to have a look at it, but also to interview the CEO of Caterham, Bob Lachley. And I'm really keen to see where this marketplace, why they feel they need to do an electric Caterham. Is this where we're going, or can the traditional Caterham carry on for many years with all the legislation? So I'm going to talk to Bob later. First of all, I'm going to talk to Anthony Giannarelli, who is the designer of the Project V, and he's going to take us around the car and we'll work out how he envisaged this car, why it's so important at Caterham. So follow me and we'll go in the studio. This is the studio where it is. We're going to go through some of the drawings later. I ought to say now, it's quite echoey in here, so apologies if the sound, we're going to try and keep our voices down so it doesn't sound like we're recording this in a church. But first of all, Anthony, thanks ever so much for today.
Thank you.
Very nice you're going to take me around the car. What a lovely sight it is. When I walked in, it's one of those cars that actually look better than it does in the pictures, which is always a good sign. I actually thought it was grey, but it's quite a sort of subtle sort of green colour as well.
It's all about the package, basically. You know, I keep explaining that it's like the goal all the time is to make a small car, but with the right proportions. And I think that's what we nailed in some sort. And this color, there's a story about it. It's actually, again, very logical and very in line with what Caterham stands for, like it's simplicity, lightness, and fun to drive. That's the other thing. But you know, when you launch a car, you want to find a tricky color, but then people will comment about it. So the idea was just to get a grey metallic car, and because it's British, it has to be green. So it's actually a metallic grey with a slight hint of green. But people seem to love it, so
yeah. Good. Well, it's more than a hint of green, I would say. I would never describe that as a grey colour. And the other immediate impression when I see it, I don't think it's electric. It just looks, you know, a beautiful shape, has a radiator at the front. It looks conventional, but you and I know it is electric.
But in some sort, everything has a purpose. Again, it's a Caterham philosophy, so you know, it has this mid-engine stance, basically. But the great thing is that actually you get the silhouette of the mid-engine, but you take out the engine and you can have a second seat at the back. Right. So it's actually a 2+2 or 2+1 in the shape of a mid-engine nimble sports car. And that's, I would say, the big advantage of using an electric package.
So when did you start drawing this out?
It was about a year ago, actually, from now. And as I said, I used, you know, your video just to actually get but it's like the brief was to create a link with the Lotus Elan, because there is a link with the 7 from Lotus, and Takahashi-san was in love with the car, so we said, okay, let's try to understand what is a Lotus Elan, and then, you know, I don't have one myself, so I use yours, basically.
I'm very fond of mine. I've owned a Land for many years now, and there's still a lovely shape. They still look quite modern, I always think, this sort of thing. I think you see that from the rear, actually, more, don't you? You were saying that you copied the Elan lights and how the Elan has a boot lid like that, doesn't it, in that flat rear.
Yeah, it's a structure, basically, because when we say copy between designer, we are a bit careful. Yeah. But the inspiration is from the Elan. Yeah. And especially in the headlight, you know, in the rear light, is some kind of, it takes the same silhouette as the Elan. And actually, it can become a great signature for Caterham, because, you know, when you have to design something without any styling DNA, you know, you wonder. And we thought at the beginning of a round tail light, you know. Yes. which is nice, but everybody uses it. So finding this, it's great.
Oh, it's a very good one. Yeah, it goes up to Series 3. It was like that, and then they got the E-type rear lights, didn't they?
And it has a proper bumper. I was amazed because the reaction of the audience was great about this. At the beginning, nobody was sure if we would really just stick a bumper, Yeah. But I don't know, there's something about it.
No, it has a lovely shape. It looks practical, and we were discussing A110 when you look at this car, I think that, but there is more muscle with this car, isn't there? Much more. The rear haunches, much more powerful, and looks wider to me.
Yeah, the way I describe the car usually it's in 3 stages basically. My style is called like retro-futuristic, so you always try to take the best of both worlds. So if you look at the bottom of the car, it's all about showing the functionalities of the car. Like the 7, you see the functionalities, form follows function. So this car has to go through air. So you see the front splitter, the side skirts, the rear diffuser. Yeah. You see the purpose of the part, and then you go to the middle area of the car, which is actually very strict, very modern. And again, there's a hint at the 7 because you see the 7 has this aluminium folded panels. So I try to recreate the same spirit, when you fold suddenly the material.
Right.
And then the top of the car, it's all like subtle and soft and very with a lot of sensuality, like glamorous, all the term. And I guess that's where you get the Italian feel in some sort. For me, it's a seduction part,
It's always good, and it's nice to have your name on it. But Italian design, you can't beat Italian design. But a little surprise. Caterhams never had a roof, really.
Yeah.
You've got a roof.
I know. Yeah, we were challenged at the beginning with the brief because we were like, are you sure you want to do a car like this? Because people expect to be connected with the outside, Yeah. And this is, but at the same time, this car has a different function of the 7, And like the aim is not that you will not replace the 7 with this car. This car could be almost a daily drive. Yeah. I see it as the same purpose as a 911, some sort. You have enough space inside, it's a small package, it's electric, so it's easy to drive, and it's light, and you get a certain status with this car that's,
So next to an Alpine A110, you've got rear space, you've got more space in it. So how much longer is it?
It's only 5 centimeters longer than the A110, yeah. The wheelbase is quite long, actually.
So it's because it's electric that then frees up this volume that you can...
Yeah, that was the first thought. When the brief was to create a 2+2, you say, actually a Caterham should be as short as possible, you think of it. And you're like, okay, how can we make it as short as possible, but still being a 2+2? Finally, the electric solution is a good solution because you see an electric motor is very small, so usually I explain that if you want to imagine the volume taken, it's like a virtual cylinder that with the diameter of the wheel, and then all the rest is empty basically. So you can have a great boot, a lot of size, and a rear bench basically.
Now, is that the standard configuration like this?
Personally, I hope for, so we will still have to make sure with the production, but yeah, it makes sense because we wanted to test the market with that. And the point is that you can never put 2 adults at the back in this type of car.
Yeah.
So, and if you're a kid, basically, you're stuck behind the seat. Yes. It's not fun, it's a punishment to be at the back.
Yes.
So imagine you're a father, you have 2 kids, a teenager and a child. Yeah. You can be in the middle, see the road, you can have fun as well, I
think that's very popular, and a child seat could go there for your if you do the Isofix. And the wheel size is quite big, isn't it? It's 20 inch.
Yeah. This is, we always joke with Bob because he says, you designers, you want the biggest wheel. Yes. But it helps for the proportion, I mean, everyone wants this. And it works also with an electric car because we might reduce the width of the tire, but the diameter helps because an electric car has a lot of torque.
Right.
So you might be okay with a bigger wheel and it has a better rolling efficiency.
Yes.
So actually it can make sense on such a car,
But wide, it's 285 at the rear, I think. Alpine was 235, so...
Yeah, that's where we are still in front of a concept car,
Right.
I mean, at the beginning it was a very quick process. And to be honest, when we worked with Italdesign on the package, they were like, what wheels do you want? And we didn't have time to really check everything.
But you got black wheels. I wish
Yeah.
it didn't have black wheels. I'm sorry. You're a fan of black wheels, are you?
I mean, for me, like what matters is the silhouette,
Yes.
and I don't want people to be attracted to the design of a specific area.
Right.
So yeah,
right.
it's a thing, you know.
Interesting.
But
Wow.
as I said, no, anybody can choose anything. You know, I don't. There's no right or wrong in this story.
No. I presume these are the charging ports either side, it seems to be.
Yeah. The funny thing is that we need the charging port, and there's a story about the front of the car.
Yeah.
If you see the shot lines are very clean, it's only
Yeah.
like a clean straight line here, and then you get to the back. So you have a huge clamshell,
They're huge, yeah.
and this part will not open for the user, only for maintenance.
Okay.
And the key thing is that thanks to that, we have much more space for the suspension system,
Right.
and we don't have to add extra panels inside, etc. So it goes with the lightness process, you know.
Right.
And so you will be able to charge the car from the side, and the other side, you know, for all the coolants, all the liquids, you know, you will be able to fill in.
Right.
And so the point is like you don't use this because you have space at the back, space
At the rear.
And there is another point with the front is that I still try to create a connection with the 7 styling-wise. So you can imagine actually the starting point was you take the volume of the 7,
Yeah.
so you recognize the nose basically,
Yes.
and the mouth like this very,
Right. Right.
and you see it's like if it's a 7, that's finally you started to cover the wheels, and you
Yes.
covered, as you said before, it was open, so now you cover the cabin, and you have this very clean surface, but actually it's all logical.
Yeah,
And so it's
that
like
makes
a
sense.
7 inside the Project
Yeah.
V.
And it's actually got a radiator there as well, isn't it? It's a genuine radiator.
Yeah,
So it's not a fake grill.
No, it serves the purpose.
Yeah.
And as Bob will explain, it's about the type of battery we will use in this car.
Yeah. Well, I feel very grateful to now see it in the in the Metro Assembly. So thank you, Anthony.
No,
I'm gonna,
pleasure.
go over to Bob and understand the technology behind it and where this sits in it. But that was great to walk round.
Thank you, Harry.
Well, very nice to meet you. Thank you for inviting us down to look around this. How long have you been at Caterham then, CEO?
So I've been at Caterham 2 years and I've been CEO for the last 12 months.
Really? So you've been right at the birth of this car. Is this what you came in to do? Or?
Yeah, I think basically, I mean, I was appointed when the new owners, VT Holdings, acquired the company.
Yeah.
I was initially Chief Strategic Officer to try and set the direction for the future of the company. This
Yes.
was one of those strings that we're heading towards.
Yeah. Well, an electric Caterham came as a surprise to me when I saw it at Goodwood. So, yeah, was that always going to be the direction, do you think?
So this car's always been an EV from the conception.
Yeah.
But it
was.
doesn't mean that the 7's going away. We'll carry on making the 7. We're going to make it into the next decade with ICE engines. This is to complement that range and expand and grow the business.
Right. But this will always be pure electric, this
Correct.
car.
Yes.
Yeah. And Anthony's very kindly taken me around it. It has more muscle to it. I couldn't get over it. It sort of looks conventionally powered, but you actually have radiators in the front, and they're needed, aren't they?
They are,
On this, yeah, for the battery. And it's a coupe, and you don't normally do coupes at Caterham.
And that's the direction set by VT very clearly.
Right.
VT believe there is an opening in the market for EV sports car with a 2+1 or 2+2 seating configuration. And that is a very big opportunity for growth in the future to grow the business.
This is where they see Caterham going.
Correct,
then,
yes.
With a more
Yeah.
usable car. I mean, it's 600 cars a year, isn't it, at the moment?
So
Caterham?
we sell more than 600 cars a year, but our current capacity is around 600.
Yeah.
Next year we're moving to a new factory to increase that to 750.
Right.
But there's some homologation constraints around the total volume of 7s that we can produce. So
Yes.
there's an ultimate size of the market of 7s, and to grow the business we need a new product.
And is this what I would term a world car? Then?
Correct, yeah. I mean, initially we're planning on launching it in the UK, Europe, Japan, which are traditionally our biggest customers, biggest markets now. UK, France and Japan actually are the biggest markets for 7s. Ultimately, we plan to introduce this in North America and possibly China some couple of years after the start of production.
And price point on it, that's an important point, I would guess, because that sets everything, doesn't it, what you can do?
Yeah, so we're starting from £80,000 in the UK.
Because 80,000 doesn't buy quite as much as it did even 3 years ago at the moment, doesn't it?
That's true, but one of the things about Caterham's core DNA is simplicity.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of features that we haven't got in this car that you would traditionally have in a mainstream car. There's no, for example, there's no embedded navigation or audio system. We're just planning to have smartphone mirroring for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay.
We haven't actually looked at the interior. We ought to have a quick look at that.
Yeah.
Oh. It's bigger than I expected in here. I could actually go a bit forward, I think. Yeah. Conventional dials, that's nice to see. Yeah, they are actually round, aren't they? They're not a screen with dials on. They're very clever seats. They're carbon back ones, aren't they?
They are, yeah. They're the thinnest on the market to help with the packaging.
Right. And my legs are up. It's, So where's the battery on this car?
So we have two battery packs. One of the battery packs is underneath your feet, which is why your legs feel slightly elevated.
Right.
The seating position is very, very similar to a 7 though, so I don't think anybody's complaining about the pedals being slightly elevated.
No, and I can see the wings actually, I can see the bubbles of the wings at the front. But you have a screen, but you're saying that's all just going to be from your mobile, or whatever appears there.
Yeah, I mean the packaging and the layout is, I think, one of the masterpieces of Anthony's design and the work we did with IDG in Italy, because we used their virtual suite and lab to lay everything out, and the sheer fact that it's an EV gives us more space to play with.
Yeah, and it is big, isn't it? It's much bigger than I expected in here. What is its basic construction then? Is it?
So we're planning on using a composite body, and that allows us to achieve the weight target that we're trying to deliver, which is 1190 kilograms.
This hasn't got a carbon tub though, is it? Is the
the structure that we're talking about is composite, not necessarily carbon. But
right, but it's not metal.
It's a combination of metal and composites.
Volume in here is a surprise, and you're fixed with a coupe. You're going to have a coupe. To me, Caterham's always in the open, and you're enjoying the open. So this feels very grown up for Caterham, because I always think Caterham's in the toy business, as it were, but this feels a bit more practical than I expected.
I think you can use this as a daily. You can package 3 people in here. We're very comfortable with the direction. The 7's still going to exist, as I've said before.
That's it, isn't it? And that's something I've never seen in a Caterham. An AC button. Unheard of. Air conditioning.
It comes with the nature of putting a roof on.
Yeah, I suppose it does. Right. You've got a technical drawer. I'd quite like to just talk around that.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah. Well, first surprise is you've actually split the battery. Looking at that as a layman, is that what's going on? There's two batteries.
So there's 2 battery packs, but the sole reason for that is to put the seating in the same position it would be in a conventional sports car.
Okay.
Which is why when you sit inside, you've got a decent headroom, and the bottom of the seat is closest to the floor.
Right.
The side effect is, as we mentioned earlier, that your feet are slightly elevated, and this battery pack is about 80 millimetres thick, and your feet are about 80 millimetres higher than normal.
That's why.
I mean, it's not an elevated seating position like a Formula One. You're not sitting in a bathtub with your feet on the taps, but you are in the seating position is conventional place with your feet slightly elevated. And if you imagine, this pack at the back is double that thickness, so take half of that and put it there. That's where that comes from.
But what's the weight distribution target?
It's to try and get that Caterham-esque tail-happy kind of fun to drive feeling. So the exact split's not decided yet. It depends on the final technology we choose for the motor, inverter, and everything else. But we want to get that fun to drive element into the car from the beginning.
I was talking to Anthony. The big front clamshell doesn't open, and that helps you here in this area.
Yeah. So we've consciously tried to focus on the simplicity of this car. Yeah. Not having a luggage space at the front saves us another closure, another set of hinges, another plastic tray, all of which weighs maybe 10 kilos, which is 10 kilos off the overall weight of the car. But then the side effect of that is it gives us complete freedom underneath there to lay everything out in the optimum space for performance fun to drive. We can put the steering rack where it should be. For a traditional performance car, which is in front of the front axle, we can put the wishbones where we want, have the size of wishbones we would like to choose. And the focus is on that driving capability. That's the core of everything we do, is to replicate that fun to drive experience that you get in a 7.
Yeah. The electric car, I just don't see it as a fun device. This has somehow more appeal because it's quite a sexy looking thing, and I like the lightweight and things. So you have a challenge for perhaps traditionalists like me to prove this is going to be fun, I suppose.
Well, we need to get you in a lightweight EV as soon as possible, and see what it's like. Everything's relative. The world's moving towards heavier electric, different types of powertrain. We just still want to keep at the bottom end of that weight scale, and weight's just relative. We just want to produce the lightest, most fun to drive EVs. The direct comparison back to an ICE car, let's see where we end up. But finally, this is going to weigh a similar sort of level to Alpine A110, which has got good reviews for its handling and performance.
It's great fun. Yeah, it's the lightness.
And the lightness is what brings that, and we're all about lightness.
Yeah. The Japanese, though, they're looking at different tech in a way. I saw that Mazda at Tokyo Show and how they're doing it, and whether there's other ways of doing electric. They've got a range extender drivetrain, haven't they?
So this whole technology debate, car manufacturers have invested billions in the EV technology. Yeah. So all future cars are going to have a battery, an electric motor. The differential part will be how that battery is charged, whether it's from a socket, from an ICE engine, or from a fuel cell, or some other way of charging that battery. But the future is cars are going to have battery, electric motor, and something to put the energy in there. And that's the way I look at it. That's that very simple way. And even if you break down the Mazda, it's got a battery and a EV powertrain with something charging that battery, and it's the size of the battery that's differentiated by what's charging it. Simple as that.
Right. Because so far the electric supercars, I think, all they've done is just add more battery, more motors, and they think acceleration is the fun bit. You're not coming at it from that point of view, really.
Absolutely not. We're purely coming at it from a weight point of view. The 0 to 60 performance of this is not stellar. It's 4.5 seconds. It's not. We're not chasing less than 2 seconds. We're chasing that element of going around corners in a fun performance way. If you look at the big heavy sports cars, that's just the state of where EV technology is now, and it becomes, I don't want to say a vicious circle, but when you're doing the planning for those big supercars, it's like, I can get 500 horsepower out of an electric motor, I can get 1,000 horsepower out of an electric motor, and you convince yourself that you need that, which then you need a big heavy battery, and you can get the incredible numbers that people are chasing. We're going in slightly the opposite direction. If this ultimately ends up on a track, at a track day, the only time you use the 0 to 60 is driving out of the pit lane, and you're not allowed to speed in the pit lane anyway. No. It's more about how quickly you go around the corners and the experience of going around the corners, which is what a Caterham's all about. Yeah,
well, it's the engagement. So I was going to ask whether there is when you're developing this car, are you thinking about road and track at the same time? How do you see this?
I think initially we're talking about road. This is going to be a fun to drive car on the road, and Sunday morning, cars and coffee, sprint out, come home, put it back in the garage, or use it as a daily in town, something more elegant than your conventional SUV or small EV. But ultimately, as the technology develops, then we see an opportunity for this for the track. But the infrastructure at circuits needs to improve, the charging capability needs to improve. And frankly, the most expensive cells you can buy are ones that you can charge quickly and discharge quickly, which is exactly what you want on a track. Right. So it's more about affordability in a business case as well. The price point is important to us, but that's going to drive the level of performance that we've got. We think with relatively off-the-shelf battery cells with that weight and that performance, we can make a business case out of it. If we were sitting here saying that we want something that's akin to a supercar that's got cells that are twice as energy dense and can charge 3 times as quick, we'd be talking a significantly bigger number for the sale of this car. It doesn't mean that in the future that battery option could be available as that becomes more affordable, as that technology develops. And maybe the differentiator in the future is not I've got a 1.3, a 1.6 or a 2 litre or this turbo boost, that turbo boost, that turbo boost. It's different battery technology that gives you the differential.
Because things are changing so quickly at the moment. It must be really hard.
Exactly. And one of the core things for us as well, Caterham have always repurposed OEM technology. Let's put it like that. So we plan to do the same, and that means we can get the most affordable OEM developed technology and integrate it into our car. And as that develops, we can update as well. If you look at the 7, we've had K-series engines, Vauxhall engines, various different Ford engines. And potentially that's how this will develop moving forward for the next decades to come.
Well, yes, I was going to say that the Caterham 7 has a 50-year life. The actual outside shape hasn't changed.
No.
So you're this. I suppose that's where I ought to look at this then, to view this.
I think that's exactly right, Harry. I mean, if we look at the design of this car, I think if this design was here 10 years ago or it's here 10 years hence, it would still be timeless. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that Anthony's put together in this car. Because it harps back to that retro design, the modernity, it is timeless. So if we're still making the same shape car in 15, 20 years' time, it won't have dated.
No. So I'm staring at Caterham's 911 then, in other words.
Well, that's very generous of you to say so.
But it is, isn't it? It's a direction. That's what you're sort of saying. It's a coupe and what you can do.
You could say that the 911 is Porsche's Caterham 7 because it hasn't changed for 50 years.
I suppose not. So the technology under the skin will develop as it comes. I mean, how long do you see the 7 lasting? Is engine supply still fine?
Legally, we can sell the 7 well into the next decade. And in certain markets, changes in legislation will stop us selling in certain markets. Bizarrely, it's not emissions that will stop us, it's more of the global safety requirements that we have to apply. But engine supply is another big factor.
Must be.
At some point, Ford will stop making a Duratec engine. We need a successor. We're looking at what successors could be available. We know from talking to OEMs that they're still planning to make ICE engines into the next decade. The big question for us is whether they'll physically fit inside the shape of a 7. But we're confident enough to have just taken a lease on a new factory for the next decade and more and increase the capacity of 7 production, which will continue to use ICE engines.
And sustainable fuel, we've got that argument as well, haven't we? But it's the actual hardware.
We're just concentrating on the hardware. I mean, when a sustainable fuel is developed, it will work in any ICE engine. So that is not something that we can ignore, but it's not something that needs to be on our development roadmap.
Returning to the Project V then, when do I get to see one actually working? When am I going to try a prototype? When does it go to the market?
So it goes to the market in 2026. But VT is supporting us strongly, and we're in a round of trying to raise investment, and to help us with that, we need as many potential customers to express their interest in buying this car. So that's where we are currently.
That's what's happening.
Some customers have expressed an interest in having both. A lot of the interest we've had so far is from completely new markets, completely new cohort of customers.
Well, this is a lovely place to start. The design is absolutely cracking. Can't wait to try it. And you prove to me that it's fun to drive. That's the one I want to find out.
It has to be a Caterham. So
that's what Caterhams are. Thank you very much, Bob. That was fascinating.
It's our pleasure.
All right. Well, there we are. Deep dive into the Caterham Project V, this electric sports car coming from Caterham, both from the design point of view and then the manufacturing point of view with Bob. I wouldn't have predicted 5 years ago I'd be standing in the studio with electric Caterham. But I like the simplicity, I like the lightweight sort of philosophy behind it, and we're not chasing those numbers as seems to be the vein of electric sports cars. I don't see the point of 1,000 horsepower electric roadsters, whatever Tesla think, or some of the other sports cars out there, but the simplicity of Caterham and like Lotus as well, all come down to the driving and what it feels like to drive and whether it excites. So, but it's great to see this project. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, well, keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming on very soon.